We're live. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Good Thing podcast hosted by me, Stefan, and joined by my co-host, Jens. Excuse me for a little bit. I'm a little bit tired because yesterday was a huge day for us at WunderGraph. So you might have seen the news, but we finally announced our Series A funding, which was led by 𝗪𝗵 Ventures, and then with a strategic follow-on from eBay Ventures, and then our existing investors continuing their investment in us with Aspenwood Ventures. But amazing news. We're super excited about that. Today, we're going to talk about why we took the funding, building the future of API collaboration, and everything that it means to us. But before that, I told Jens that I would do this, a little bit of a celebration on our end. So good. If you guys watch some old episodes that we used to post from like WunderGraph Show and Tell, we used to use that horn a lot, which was awesome. But yeah, Jens, I mean, welcome back. It's kind of weird now because we did it in person last week, which was a bit more fun in my opinion. But yeah, any thoughts on the Series A? Anything you want to tell the crowd?
It's funny you say it was exhausting because what did you do yesterday?
It was exhausting. I had to reply to everyone's LinkedIn message. Thank you. Thank you. You know, old friends were coming into my Instagram like, hey, how are you? Good to see you. Things like that. So very tiring.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. From my perspective, it's much less about the raising the money and much more about what it actually means to raise the money. All the work that went into this before, so that was I would say a huge undertaking, and it's also super weird. And I'm actually happy that we now have this out because, yeah, for a very long time we couldn't talk about it. And we couldn't talk about that we were able to yeah, turn the ship around, and we couldn't talk about the ups and downs and everything. And it's also, I would love to be more transparent as a founder, but how transparent can you be about struggling after a seed round and things not working out? And yeah, you want to show confidence. You want to be able to tell people like, hey, it's working. You can rely on what we're doing. And yeah, I think last year was very hard, especially in the beginning, and then we started turning it around, and yeah, now we're here.
Yeah, well said. And I think an important thing is that people see funding rounds as like, wow, amazing. And I don't see them that way. I actually see them as completely differently. And Gary Tan from Y Combinator, like I think he's the president and CEO now, he says when you get a new funding round, you don't pop champagne. You pour yourself a little glass of wine and then you get right back into it the next day. Only on exits, or if you get acquired, or if you IPO, that's when you really pop the champagne. And so I fully agree with you. Like, the money's cool, the press is cool, but what it really means is, hey, now we can accelerate our mission, and that's what matters. And what we always talk about, our customers. How can we use this money to benefit our customers more? What do you think about that?
You said the money is cool. I don't think the money is cool. I think the money is money. And it's not even our money. Okay, it's now in the company. So it's a tool. Okay, so the company has customers, and it has revenue, and it has products. And with the money, we can essentially build more product faster than we could do if we bootstrapped. Which also leads a bit to the question of, why are you even, it was funny, like we did this announcement video of and you mentioned like, hey, why are we diluting our shares? Because
Yeah.
that's real. Every funding announcement, it should actually be like, hey, we have diluted our shares. Yippee. Like, yeah. What's so cool about that? And I think from a founder perspective, if you want to take funding, you have to ask yourself the question, is it worth diluting? What do I get for it? And for example, in our situation, I think with the current market climate, there's so much going on. There's AI, there's federation, there's other players with huge market shares. There's innovation that could happen. There's investments we could make. But if we do all of this in a bootstrapped way, we have to operate at a different pace. And I think from our perspective, I can speak for all founders. It was clear that this year has a lot of opportunities we wouldn't be able to take without additional funding, because we couldn't go as fast as we want. And like if you want to handle enterprise customers right, you have to have certain things in place. And so I don't think it was like such a tough decision to make. It was more like, I think it's the right time. And then eBay came along, and eBay is pretty cool, because I wrote about this in the blog post in our announcement, and they help us a lot. Like, if you are a startup and you're building something for enterprise, it is worth a lot if you can have a design partner who helps you understand how enterprise works, what kind of integration points you need for metrics and other things. And so I think it's a very helpful thing. And then also the brand, in terms of what it means, if you can put on your landing page that such a big company is not just a customer but also an investor. I think that also means something. So, and I think in general it has a meaning that a public company is betting on us. It speaks for the relationship we have built with the people. I don't know, what else would you add?
There's a lot that you said there. I mean, there's a lot to unpack. David saying that we were late. Yes, this is true. We were a little bit late, but sorry about that. But I mean, there's a lot to unpack with funding. Like, I totally agree with you. Like, you should really, when you're building a company, you should really understand why you want to take funding. Do you want to move faster? Do you want to build a lifestyle business? Do you want to IPO eventually? Like, what is your goal as a founder? And I think a lot of founders skip that and they go, oh, I need to raise money. But like, why do you need to raise money? Like, why do you need to do this? Why do you want to dilute your shares? There's great companies out there that do great in revenue, and it's a sole owner. He owns 100% of the company. He bootstrapped it from the beginning. It might have taken him longer. And also, it's important to understand investors. So investors want to give you money because they want to see a return in about 10 years. And theirs is go really fast or hit the ground and burn and then go to the next one. And a lot of people don't understand is that investors really just care about the power law, is that one company in their portfolio will return the whole fund. Their goal is just to find that one company. Other funds are different. There are some funds that really don't care about that, and they make strategic bets, and they act more like I would say, like, I don't know, like a strategic bank. They're making good bets, small acquisition here. So I think definitely as a founder, you want to understand why you want to take funding. And then I talk about this a lot with my friends. They're like, oh, like funding must be amazing. It must be amazing. And it's like, it's cool, but again, it's just a tool. Like, you're just using the money, and it also adds a lot of headache on it. If you remember the guy, Parker Conrad, he's the founder of Rippling. He says fundraising is actually the easiest part about building a company because you go and you do these pitches and it's annoying and people complain like, oh my God, I've pitched 1,000 times or I've pitched 5,000 times. But if you go and you build a real company, that's actually the easiest part, because the hardest part is once you get the money, is like, oh shit, now I have to execute. And yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about this. Like, I mean, we were pretty frustrated when we were raising for the Series A, not because we weren't getting traction, but because we just wanted to go back and work with the customers and focus on the stuff that matters. Like, this is important, yes, but what are your thoughts on that? Do you remember, like, in December when we went to Tallinn, we got to meet our amazing lead investors, Karma. Then we went to London, and in 5 days we went to 6 countries, I think, and we were just exploring and just talking to VCs. And that whole time we could have been with customers, but like, talk to me a little bit about that, like the balance of going and having to raise money and putting on your fundraising hat, and then also having to delegate, like your customers and things like that.
I mean, ideally, you don't have to raise.
Yeah.
And I think you can also very much lose yourself in a fundraising game, and also you can. Are you laughing?
No, it was my chair.
Just a chat. Okay. The thing is, you can try to find validation in what VCs say, and this can be extremely dangerous. VCs are not your customers, and I don't know, but it's super weird. But when we raised our Series seed, I was super interested, or I was really trying to get VCs to buy into what we're doing, and to impress them, and to be like, hey, we're innovative, blah blah blah. And at Series A, I don't know. I think really what matters is what kind of customer stories you have. What have you learned from customers? What do you see in the market? And you don't need confirmation from VCs. So, and by the way, one comment you made on VCs making returning the fund. There's different VCs. So some VCs want to return the fund, others have other models. So, and this is also a thing. Fundraising is selling. You're selling a ticket on your ship, and this ship should find gold. And now you need to tell people why your ship is good. Like how will it find gold and stuff like that. And so it's very much like selling, but the problem is you want to sell your product, and that's actually a different product than selling a ticket on your ship. So it's a huge distraction because you also have to sell differently. Like, your customers, they care about your features. VCs care about the features of your ship. So why is your ship a good ship? Why sail with you? Why not another ship? Is your ship diesel engine? Is it whatever, electric? And how will it succeed in very bad waves and all this kind of stuff? Like, and yeah, so I don't know. Fundraising is into you know me. I very much like sales, and I like to understand what people want. And I think a big, you mentioned there's people who have like hundreds of VC calls and stuff. I think you don't need hundreds of VC calls. What you actually need is, just like sales, you need a process to vet VCs, because it's about leads. So you should have a lot of leads. You should have a good phone book, and you should figure out who understands what you're doing. Because, let's say you build a ship and you want to sail it to America, and you talk to people who don't understand America, and they don't want to go there. You can tell them, hey, my ship is fast, but they don't want to go to America, or they don't understand what you're trying to do. And so ideally, you can build a network of VCs around you who already align with your direction. And so a lot of fundraising, it actually starts months and years before raising. Like at seed stage, for example, you have an idea, and you do something, and they don't give you money, but they observe, and then you keep them updated on your progress. You pivot, okay, you tell them about it. And this is also an important thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with pivoting. Like, nobody cares if you pivot. What people care about is, are you finding a way to gold? And so if you go the wrong way and then you change course and you find something, then tell that story, because it means, okay, now they have experience, they have learned something. Okay, it's better to bet on them. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance in fundraising. It's a fun game, but it's also a distraction from building product and talking to customers, working with customers. So okay, typical long monologue.
But it's well said, though. Like, I kind of like
pick your part and rip it apart.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's important, and like, especially for you, like, I mean, you didn't have experience. I mean, none of us had experience with pitching to VCs, especially coming from a pure technical background. But what I've learned about venture capitalism is like, so seed stage is you're betting on the team. You're really just betting on the team. The product might be amazing, but especially if they're first time founders, you're betting and saying, hey, can this group of guys or girls or whatever this group is, can they execute and build this into $1 billion company? Series A, though, is a little bit different. Series A is a little bit more serious, and it's like, hey, okay, they built this part out. We're still betting on the team, but now we're betting on the product. We're betting on the market. How big is this actual market? How fast can they grow? I agree with everything that you've said. One thing, though, that they don't talk about with VCs is how lucky we are to have someone like Bjorn. So Bjorn is somebody that keeps the relationships year round with investors. He keeps them updated. And a lot of people drop that ball if one of the founders isn't doing it. And people, they misunderstand. They think, oh, like I'm not sending emails to investors, but just because they don't invest now doesn't mean that they won't invest later. And it's important that Jan said, keep this relationship and this circle around you, but they should be what we call in sales your ICP. People that understand you, they understand the space that you're in, and that they could potentially invest down the road. But yeah, it's well said. Regarding though, like the last question I have on raising money is that, like, in the early days with the seed, like, what were some of the mistakes you made? I mean, there was the one with the Zoom call that was pretty funny, where you asked them to turn
Zoom
on the
call.
camera. Yeah, you remember when you asked the guy, "Can you turn on your camera?" and he was like, "No," and you're like, "All right, let's end this meeting." That wasn't really a mistake though, now that I think about it. But what were some mistakes you made when we were in the early days when you were learning how to fundraise?
I mean, it's natural, but I think early on I wanted to impress people.
Yeah.
And just think about it. If you know what you're doing and you know you have a ship to gold, do you have to impress people, or are you more like, good day, I have a ship to gold. Do you want a ticket? But I have not so many tickets. Like you need to be quick. So and this is an attitude of, you know what you're doing, or are you the kind of guy like, hey, I have this ship, it's amazing, like you really really need to join, and like nobody's on the ship yet, but it will be a great ship. And so yeah, like don't try to impress VCs, but this is hard in the beginning because you feel like you have to. And I think, I mean, the most important thing is, I always get these calls. It's so annoying. Okay, so I mean, the first step to becoming better at pitching to VCs is you need to start pitching to VCs. So it's not possible to improve pitching if you don't do it. So step number one, just pitch to VCs and don't think too much over it. And then there's this other thing. People obsess about pitch decks, and you find online like, hey, here's the pitch deck how company blah 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 raised whatever amount of money. Okay, the pitch deck doesn't really matter. Like nobody cares. Like, okay, some people at some point they will look at the pitch deck, but you really need one slide. This slide is, we have found gold. Here's how our revenue grow. If you have this slide, then it's a done deal. And if you don't have this slide, you kind of need a whole backup deck that somehow still convinces people, and that's really hard. Like, so the reality is, ideally, bootstrap your startup without funding. Get it in a place where the startup doesn't need money. Okay, so bootstrap to the place where it works, and then have a good plan what you really would do with the money, because it just it really sucks if you go to VCs and you're like, please give me 3 million. We don't know what we're doing. We need the money to build a team, and then we try to figure it out. Like that doesn't sound like you're on the path to gold. It sounds more like, yeah, whatever. And maybe you have a super good team, and maybe you can somehow convince people that with this team you can build something. But I don't know, if I could do it again, build real traction and get somewhere. And to be honest, I think if you start a startup and you don't have an experienced founder in the startup team, or at least as an advisor, and not like, not an advisor from somewhere, but really like a friend or something who's a really good advisor who went through the steps in the last couple of years, I wouldn't even start a startup. Because I don't know, if I compare my ego, my alter ego today to a few years ago, we were rookies. We had no clue. It's ridiculous we achieved this. So get yourself someone who knows how to do it, because they so if I would today talk to a first-time founder with a few questions, I can destroy them. And just because they are not focused on the right things and they don't understand nothing, and it's just so hard in the beginning to build a startup.
I'd push back though on that. Like,
oh, I don't hear you anymore. Somehow I messed up my audio. It's not you.
Can you hear me now? So while Jens is figuring out his audio, one of the things that I will say is fundraising. It's interesting. Yes, it's important. It is a bit of a distraction, but it is important. And what I compare fundraising to is kind of like dating. Like with dating, it's interesting. The harder you try to get the person, the less interested they are. The less interested that you play, and the person that doesn't really need the relationship ends up winning. And then obviously there's FOMO, like as soon as you put the wedding ring on, all the girls that didn't give you a chance of day now start coming towards you because you have a wedding ring and you're taken off the market. And so that's the way I put venture capitalism. But can you hear me now, Jens? Are you good?
Yeah, I hear you. Okay. I also just chopped my ring, so
yeah, that's how I figured. But I push back on that, because you said, like, find an experienced founder. But like, if you look back at all the great companies, like they might have had a great like founder friend to help them out, like Mark Zuckerberg with Peter Thiel and things like that. But I also think a core strength of first-time founders is how much they underestimate. Like we underestimated a lot. And I think that's actually a strength, because if you really knew what you know now, you wouldn't have started WunderGraph. You're like, if I had to go through everything to get to this point where I'm at now, you would have been like, yeah, that's no, not for me. And I think also a lot of people, yeah, but like if you know what do you actually have to go through to start a startup, and like you see all these shows glamorizing these entrepreneurs and everything, but if you talk to a real founder, he will tell you how hard it is to start a company, how hard it is to go through all these things. And a strength is you actually don't know how hard it is. So I don't know. I would encourage people to try it. Just know it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be easy. It'll be really, really high highs. It'll be really low lows. But I think it's also a strength of being a first-time founder, because if you have all the experience, you're experienced enough to be like, this is going to be really tough. Would you agree, or where do you push back on that?
I agree and I disagree. So I would really appreciate if I could talk to me back then with my ego now, just because it could be so helpful. At the same time, you wouldn't start many companies if you had the experience. And I think one of the big benefits of a first-time founder is they don't know what they don't know, and everybody thinks you cannot do it, and they don't know that, so they just do it.
Yeah,
that's a huge advantage. Also, I don't know, but in the beginning we built the wrong thing. We didn't know it was wrong. We just built the wrong thing because we thought that's right. We figured it out, but then later on we figured out that actually we always built the right thing, but at the wrong time. So I don't know. In the end, this is something like one of my friends keeps telling me, "Hey Jens, you need to be careful with the products you're building. You're always like 5 years ahead." And it's such a difficult thing if you think you understand the market and then I don't know. I cannot sit still. I always want to make something better. I talk to customers and I'm like, okay, this workflow should be better. It should be different. But if you do it for a while, you kind of accept that you have like a long-term roadmap, you have a short-term roadmap, and you kind of need to align and you somehow need to synchronize with the vibe of the market. So you can have ideas about what you want to build and everything, and sometimes you need to wait for the market to make the right move. And so
I think that's a great transition. One of the things I really want to talk about today is like, okay, we got the funding, that's great, but what are we actually using it for? So you can say all the generic stuff. We're going to hire people. We're going to expand this. But from the product point of view, I want to go into GraphQL. Like, it's interesting, and I'll be fully transparent. So Jens originally started WunderGraph in 2020, and this was after he went to, I think, was it Apollo's conference, the original Apollo conference you went to?
GraphQL Summit in, I think, 2019.
So you went there and you had this idea of like this universal data layer. You were still working at 𝗪𝗏 at the time. You really enjoyed it. And GraphQL was hot. Like, it was really hot. I remember like even being like graduating from college, like this was something that they were putting to the curriculum. And 2020, you started WunderGraph. In 2022, we raised the funds. We started working together, me and you, 2021. But we've gone through this crazy thing where at one time there were so many GraphQL companies. There was StepSend, there was 𝗪𝗏, there was the Guild, there was all these companies, and they were well funded. Fast forward to now, there's really just us and Apollo. But what happened with GraphQL? Like, and I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to play the people on Reddit and Twitter, and you tell me what you see. Because when I see GraphQL, I actually don't see what they say on Reddit and Twitter. Oh, GraphQL is dead. Instead, I see, wow, GraphQL is growing. All these huge companies are using it. They're all going towards federation. But I want you to play that part. But from a product point of view with the funding, where do you see GraphQL? Where do you see this market? And like, where do you think it's going, especially in the next couple of years with AI? I know, a lot to unpack.
Okay. I don't want to start with GraphQL. By the way, this is not staged. We're just I'm not prepared. But if we zoom out a little bit, and this morning I had a cool conversation with Eric Wild from, I think, INEO or InnoQ or something. He's an API expert. Like,
Eric Wild, he works what is it
he's
called?
like an API catalyst.
Yeah. Okay, I remember.
So he goes into companies and he consults and helps people with API strategy, governance, everything. Okay. So we had a conversation, and it started with MCP.
Of course.
Yes, MCP. Sure. Model Context Protocol.
Real quick though, can you explain MCP, like, for maybe those that don't understand it?
Yeah. So I have an API for you, so that LLMs can talk to APIs. I put an API around the API, so LLM can talk to the API.
Okay. What problem does that solve? What does that actually do?
Yeah, that's weird. So we have APIs in the world, like REST, GraphQL, whatever. And somehow people were like, okay, LLM could talk to them, but that would be too simple. So we now say, let's create kind of like something that is similar to OpenAPI, which talks over JSON RPC, and it defines functions that LLM could call, and we call it MCP. So it's kind of like, okay, we define RPC with JSON RPC, and we create OpenAPI, and now LLM can talk to the thing. And so that's MCP. This is where this discussion started. Okay, so we were talking about this topic, and what we came down to is there's kind of like it's interesting, but in the API ecosystem, I would say there's three ways of using and interacting with APIs. So you have OpenAPI. It allows you to describe your REST API, and kind of people figured out that nobody likes to directly use OpenAPI. So what people did is they built, like there's many startups now doing it, they generate SDKs from OpenAPI specifications because people like to have classes or structs or whatever to call APIs. Okay, so the way humans use APIs is through SDKs. If you take an OpenAPI spec and you annotate it a little bit more with other stuff, you could turn that into MCP, and you obviously have to talk over JSON RPC. So that means you have two categories. You have one category. We're doing APIs for humans with SDKs. Then we're doing APIs for LLMs, and we do it with MCP. And then we have APIs for a diverse set of applications, and we're doing it with GraphQL. So we have a query interface. And the funny part is how Eric Wild was like, he wasn't mentioning GraphQL, but he started with like, yeah, if you don't care about HTTP and you just want to call classes, then use SDKs. If you don't care about HTTP and you're an AI, use MCP. And then I was like, yeah, and if you don't care about HTTP and you want to have a query interface, then GraphQL. Okay, so I would describe the current state of the API ecosystem is we have these three categories. We have SDKs, we have MCP, and we have query interface. Query interface, GraphQL, it means we have a GraphQL API, and we have many clients, and they many web clients, no mobile clients, and they use this API in different ways. So instead of creating one backend for frontend per frontend app, we have GraphQL. Okay, now every frontend can query this thing. And then there's this other side where I think the whole REST ecosystem, they kind of have it wrong. Most people these days use GraphQL not because they want to have the query interface. That's a cool benefit, but actually because they want to have the federation. So they distribute the implementation of the API across multiple services, which can be distributed across different teams. And so,
question
yeah,
there though.
Yeah.
Do you think everyone that's using GraphQL will eventually go into federation? Is that what you're trying to say there? Like the real benefit is federation? What do you mean by that?
So, you know, a long time ago, I stopped pitching GraphQL.
Yes.
Because, yeah, you can like I still think it's the best way to have multiple apps with different requirements, and it's great that you have queries and fragments, and it makes a lot of sense. But I kind of cooled down a bit on being like too enthusiastic about GraphQL on the front end side. That being said, on the backend side with federation, I think as a larger organization, you have to think about how do you build your microservice architecture, or do you build a microservice architecture at all? But I mean, if you want to scale an engineering team, it's typically very hard to have just one single monolith. And so, yeah, maybe you want to have one service per team, or at least, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, like a handful of services per team, but one service per team could be good. And so let's say you have 20 teams, so you could have 20 subgraphs, or maybe you have a few more. Let's say you are 20 teams and you have 30 subgraphs. If you don't have this federation thing, what you will have is you have this gRPC thing. So each team has, I don't know, 5 gRPC services. So you have 100 gRPC services.
Jeez.
And gRPC, it's not easy to consume from the web. It's not easy to consume from mobile apps, which also means you don't want to consume 100 gRPC services from mobile and web. It's a complicated architecture. So what can you do? You can build REST APIs on top, BFF style, or you can build a unified graph on top. And this is where federation comes into play. And now you have to ask yourself the question, like the question I asked myself many years ago when I was working for a big news corp. Do we invent our own federation algorithm? Do we touch our REST API middleware layer all the time when we change microservices? Or can we rely on a framework that federates? And so I don't know these days, why would you invent your own federation? Like, and that federation can mean that I update a microservice, gRPC, and then I go to another repository with REST APIs and I update the client and add a field to the REST API and so on and so forth. Yes, we can do that, but why? I mean, we have an algorithm for this. Federation works great. And we now also built very powerful tooling to better understand how your federated graph looks like, all these kind of things. And which brings me to another interesting topic, looking a bit into the future. But before that, I don't know if you have any questions so far.
No, I think it's really useful. And one of the cool things about the Series A announcement was these reporters took the concept of federation and they put it into their report. So what they wrote about. And my little sister, she emailed me, or not emailed me, she texted me and she said, wow, like I kind of understand now what you do, which was the essential plumbing. And she's like, okay, now I understand what APIs do and I understand what federating is. It's really interesting what you guys are doing with the plumbing. That's the only comment I have on that. I want to know though, like, because I've seen it obviously as a co-founder. I mean, you don't even talk about GraphQL anymore. You more talk about the organizational pains versus, and GraphQL is just a small subset of solving that problem. But talk to me a little bit about like the roadmap. Like, where are we going with this? Where do you see GraphQL fitting in, and especially with federation?
Yeah. So one super interesting thing that just recently happened is, sometimes you build something, like we're currently building a new thing, and this new thing, it's going to be outside of the typical realm, like router and schema registry. And something interesting happened. Sometimes you build a new tool and then you kind of realize, or you get a new view on the world, and it completely changes how you see things. And so one thing we did is, so we build a bunch of things. I don't want to be like too specific yet, but what we did is, we now have a tool which allows us to analyze queries. So we can understand how query plans would look like. So we have turned, by the way, it's open source. You can just use
You'll
it.
see it. You can see the commits.
Yeah, no. But so what we did is, we really care about reliability. And one thing to ensure reliability is, in the future, we want to improve our query planner, bring in new capabilities. And so we build a CI system that takes all schemas from our customers and all queries, and it plans all queries against them. So it generates a query plan for every single query we know. And on every pull request where we change or try to change our router, we run this thing in the backend. Like, it's not on public because we don't want to make this data public. So we run all these queries, we generate the query plans, and if there's a diff, we would flag this, and then we have to manually go through the diff and analyze Why did the query plan change, etc., etc. And so we built this, and we looked into this, and sometimes you have data in front of you, and you start thinking, you start looking, and then a very interesting process kind of started, where we had discussions in the team, and what we kind of realized is, and I think that's a world that opens up that like nobody ever touched this in the graphical space. So imagine you have a schema and you have a query. No, imagine you have a schema and you have 1,000 queries and you plan all of them. And now that you have planned all these queries, you analyze them in whatever way. So you look at the query plans, they are ASTs, and you analyze them and you build stats about what these ASTs do. So, for example, how many nodes, what kind of nodes, etc., etc. So you get statistics about these queries statically. This is static analysis. No LLM, like no magic. It's like very simple stuff. Okay, so we have these statistics, and now do the following. In Federation, we have this concept of key, and we have concepts of requires and provides and blah, blah, blah. And all these directives, they have influence on what the query planner does, how it plans something. Shareable, for example, it's another thing. Override. So all these Federation directives, they do something with your query plans. Okay, so imagine this. You have 1,000 queries and a schema. You plan them. And now you have 1,000 ASTs and you analyze them. Then you change one tiny thing in your schema. For example, you change a field, or you move a field from one subgraph into another, or you do like random stuff, whatever. And now you generate these query plans again. So they will diff. And now think about it like this. Think about, you have these 2 packs of ASTs, and somehow you're able to build insights, or you can build, you can analyze them, so you can build stats. And now think about doing a lot of changes, random changes, not so random changes, and you change the schema, and you generate the plans, and you build the stats. And so you make changes just like machine learning. And as you make changes, you see the stats go up or down, or they like let's say you have number of nodes in an AST. And this number, it goes up and down because you need to make more or less fetches or whatever. So you start to change the schema in random ways, and the query plans change. And if you do this, you kind of realize that there's federation, there's microservice architecture, then there's people, there's the organization, the people of the organization. And now you start thinking about, are we doing microservices right? In the sense that is the ski, or are the schemas we have built, are they good?
Yeah.
And is there something we can optimize? And then you kind of start going down the rabbit hole of, oh, that's a very interesting topic, because we have never thought about questioning our architecture. So when I build microservices in the past, it's like, okay, you build a website, it needs a backend, we build a monolith, we think the monolith is too big, we split it up, now we have 5 microservices. Did anybody ever question if that was a good architecture? And then, so the stuff we're thinking about is, can we build metrics? Can we understand your traffic, your query patterns, the shape of the organization, the shape of the subgraphs? can we somehow leverage the data to help people improve their architecture? And I think this is really just the starting point. And at this level, it's not about REST, it's not about MCP, not about SDKs, it's not about GraphQL, and it's not about federation. It's about the question, can we help organizations to kind of wiggle back and forth and try out what would be the optimal service structure, which team should take ownership of what? And I think it's a super interesting topic, and we're starting to do research in this area, and I have no idea where this is leading, but yeah, I think it's super interesting stuff.
Well, it is. Even if you're not like super familiar with like APIs, I think a big problem companies have is understanding their company, understanding who works on what, who owns what. A lot of companies will do like a domain-driven architecture with websites with the domain, and the team owns that. I think the architecture parts is where federation thrives. But for those of you that might not be familiar, there's a really cool mandate by it's famous. It's the API mandate from Jeff Bezos, and one of the mandate rules on there was that teams will communicate with each other only through APIs. And I think that was the first step into this. And what I understand from this, and yeah, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but federation can kind of unlock that mandate even further, is that teams can communicate and work together. You can federate across the entire company. You can understand everything within the company. And I think that's a huge problem that companies have is, okay, what team is working on what service is working on, is this field still in use on this API? Are we even using this API? And I think now with LLMs and data, it's what you said. I built it, but it was 5 years too early. And I think right now with AI and LLMs and everything that's coming even further, I think it's a great time with that. But are you able to share a little bit about like what we're kind of building, where we're envisioning the space going? Because we kind of jumped that part. Like, we went from GraphQL. This is this interesting sector that we're exploring. But what about the current GraphQL market? Like, what do you think about it, and where are we going as a company?
Yeah, good question. By the way, you know Conway's law, right?
Yeah, that I never know what it is, but if someone says it, I'm like, yep, that's Kanye's law.
I think
something it'll map your organization, right?
Yeah, the way information flows inside the organization, it kind of resembles how you build your architecture.
Yeah.
So for example, if you build a compiler with 2 teams, the compiler is very likely to have 2 steps.
With our organization and our architecture, what's our Conway's law? How are we as an organization?
Great question. How many engineering teams do we have?
1.
How many Cosmo repositories?
1.
Kind of, right? It's actually not true, because
yeah, we have little small sub teams though.
We have a small sub team. It's building the engine.
Yes.
They have their own repo, right?
Yeah, GraphQL Go tools.
Yeah, and everybody else is working on the same thing. So we have one large team, one repo, and then we have the little outpost, the engine outpost, and it's our second team, kind of.
And that's literally it, yeah. But okay, so with Kanye's law, does this only involve engineering? Like, well, like, is marketing and like sales in an organization, are they also affected by Conway's law, or like how does that work?
Yeah, sure. Like they might have the CMS or other things or whatever. So yeah. But coming back to your question about the future of GraphQL, so I think what we currently see is, with MCP, LLMs, everything, there's a huge need for organizations to unify all APIs. And if you have, in the past, there's tools like Backstage or whatever, you can put all your REST APIs. It just doesn't cut it, because now you have a problem. If you want to build SDKs on 1,000 REST APIs, or if you want to do MCP on 1,000 REST APIs, very hard. Much simpler if we can do it on top of one supergraph. So for us, next step like Supergraph, we double down on the concept. Supergraph is good.
Yeah.
The more APIs you bring onto the Supergraph, the better.
Yep.
And then the Supergraph should be able to speak whatever. GraphQL is good. SDKs on top of the Supergraph is good. And then you have RPC, like SDKs is RPC essentially. We
Yep.
did this in the past with the SDK. So
I remember, yeah.
This is something that's coming back. And also things like MCP. So it's obvious that, okay, we unify all our APIs into a Supergraph, and then we make it simple to put SDKs and MCP on top, and then everybody can leverage the Supergraph. So that gives us a pull on the Supergraph. So now everybody will be like, oh, if you can bring it on the Supergraph, it gives us superpowers. Awesome. So the next step is we need to bring everything onto the Supergraph. So we need to make it much, 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 much more simple.
Yeah.
To bring stuff onto the Supergraph. And we're investing into this topic heavily. And yeah, I think we have there's different takes in the industry how to do it. I think so we have validated our idea with many smart people. And if you not sure if you remember, but I built something called GraphQL Gateway in 2019. So 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Geez.
And it used directives to describe data sources. So Dustin is a team. Yeah. So you remember how my initial version of the GraphQL Gateway, it used directives to describe how the gateway should talk to data sources.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think it's the right approach. So you will see from us a different approach, not the connector route. We don't believe in this connector approach. We think we should go another direction. So yeah, I think the Supergraph it will be a fundamental architecture piece for every company, and it will be extremely powerful. And I don't see how REST or gRPC or anything else has something similar. And you can very easily put on top of a Supergraph SDKs and MCP. It's not a big deal with something like persisted operations or something. So it's not so hard. And then we cover the main use cases for our apps. We can have queries. So the query interface. And then we need to bring in more data onto the Supergraph, and I think this is where things get super interesting. And yeah, I think that's our focus.
You said every company, though. Do you think every company should use GraphQL? And then follow up, do you think every company should use GraphQL Federation?
I don't know if I would build just a GraphQL server today.
Yeah.
I think I don't know, maybe not a startup, but I think if I would build a startup, I would just build an like RPC or whatever, like super simple. If you are a larger organization, I would think about how can I have a Supergraph, just because I think it's a superior pattern. Bring all data together, unify it. It's so powerful, and it allows you to do so many powerful things, and and also just if you can have one unified approach how everybody discusses schema, like what are the entities in our domain. Like, for example, many years ago I worked with a car maker in Germany, and they had REST APIs, and they had, I don't know, 7 or more definitions of what a car is, and
yeah,
that's not really useful. Ideally, we can have one car definition, and we can all agree on what the field should be, etc. So, yeah,
it's well said. And it's one of the cool benefits is like our customer roadmap is that sometimes we tell companies, maybe federation isn't for you. And I think that's really important that a vendor tells you federation is useful for you, not versus just, hey, this is the ideal solution. It is an ideal solution for a lot of companies, but for some companies, it doesn't make sense. But I think that's well said. And then let's talk a little bit, because we only have 5 minutes left. I want to talk a little bit about, we got the fundraising. It's exciting, but what kind of key roles are we hiring for this next iteration? I think it's really important to understand, especially on the engineering part, what these engineers will be working on, because there's a lot of cool tech that we're working with. There's a lot of cool companies that we're working with, but what would people on the engineering team be working on if they were to join WunderGraph?
Yeah, so you can build the foundation of API infrastructure for the Fortune 500, essentially. I believe everybody will standardize on the supergraph pattern, and yeah, like you can be at the forefront of helping us define how that will look like in detail. So that's one part. And then if you look inside, we have pretty interesting topics, like you can work a lot with data structures, with AST transformations, transform between protocols. You learn a lot about high performance networking, all this kind of stuff. So I think it's super interesting. It's a super interesting topic. It's very challenging to get it right. Then enterprise integration, like telemetry, observability, all these kind of things. And then like things like graph theory, understanding how queries look like, how they plan, analyzing queries, and on the impact side, I think we can really build tooling to help organizations collaborate better. I think every digital business, it relies on APIs, be it developers who use SDKs or AI using MCP, but below both or underneath both, you have APIs. So it's very likely you have like a supergraph pattern, and we can build the architecture for that, and then you can also build. If you're Go dev, you can work on router engine, things like that. So the API gateway and the GraphQL engine. And then if you're more like a full stack dev or front end dev, then we are building tools for collaboration, for observability, analytics, like user interfaces that help people work together and work on schema and all these kind of things. So I think super interesting challenges. It's not your regular, I build a backend, I build a front end. It's more like, okay, this is a very novel space. Like nobody has been here. There's little research you can rely on. There's little cursor can do. Like sometimes you just have to figure it out yourself. And I think cool challenges we have.
A lot of them too, and we're hiring all across. And then one thing is, the founder of Kong, he said this in one of his funding announcements, is that with AI, and this is what we'll end on, because I would love your thoughts on this, is, you're familiar with the assembly line, right? Like how Henry Ford, they would make the cars, they would go down the assembly line and there'd be a single person and they would just do that single job. And then before you know it, the car is built by the end of it. And he said what the internet is people building all these services, but it's going across an assembly line. So a company is like General Motors, and they're building these cars. These cars are their products. And as it goes down the assembly line, APIs are the parts, the screw, this thing here, that thing there, what the person is connecting to that. Would you agree with that statement? I really like it as an analogy for how APIs work, but where does AI fit into that? Like, how does AI improve building APIs better and faster?
I'm not sure how. Does API help building APIs faster? I'm not sure on that, but what I think is going to happen, at least that's my prediction. Not sure if it's too early to predict, but if we can build a supergraph and we have MCP, and now tools like Cursor, ChatGPT, etc., they can hook into SuperGraph.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, like, I think this will unlock like a new internet, because I think very soon
Web3.
we will have, huh?
Do you remember Web3? All the crypto bros saying there's a new internet with the blockchain. Is that what you're referring to? A new internet?
No, but so I think companies like Anthropic and others, I think they are very close to building agents who can autonomously do tasks.
Yeah.
And I think the SuperGraph pattern is a perfect foundation to enable MCP to talk to anything in your company. I don't think you want to build MCP as a translation layer to everything, but if MCP is just a thin layer that speaks GraphQL, then the SuperGraph becomes an essential part. So I think very soon we will have commodity tools with agents. So I can open something like Excel or like Excel like a business user app, and it has agent capabilities. And now I can give it MCP access, and then I think it can do anything. It can pull data out of our database, like customer records, like anything. It can be so powerful. And then I'm just wondering where this is going. It can accelerate like quite rapidly that new applications evolve that now built on top of these layers. And then I think we're kind of in the shovel business, because we're the boring pipes, and the data needs to come from somewhere. And I think it's a good spot to be in, because I think agents, they will really accelerate stuff, and they need data. We do that, so I'm excited.
It's a good spot to be in. And so we'll end on that, because we have actually a retro after this, and Dustin will be mad if we're late. But to end the episode, we're really excited about the fundraising round. We're hiring across all fronts. Come help us build the essential plumbing for basically every company out there. There's a lot of interesting problems you can work on here. You've seen our Conway's Law. It's 2 teams, mostly just one big team and one small team working on the query planning and the engine. But it's fascinating stuff that they're really doing. We're hiring on all fronts, so keep a lookout on the website. And Jens, what's the good thing?
We're back next week.
The good thing is we're back next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good time, and have a